Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. And excuse me, I want to, before I introduce my friend from Maryland, read from Marine General Joseph Hoare, former Commandant of U.S. Central, when he appeared before the Senate Foreign Relations on January 18th of 2007. This Marine General said, and I quote, "The proposed solution is to send more troops and it won't work. The addition of 21,000 troops is too little and too late." With that, I want to yield 6 minutes to the gentleman from Maryland, himself, former Marine, always a Marine, who served during Vietnam and was wounded for this country. I yield this time, 6 minutes, to the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Gilchrest.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I thank the gentleman from North Carolina for being generous with this time, and I also want to sincerely thank the gentleman from North Carolina for his effort to resolve the issue successfully and for bringing those of us who are speaking here this morning together and for organizing this time. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to vote for this resolution for many reasons that I will explain, but this resolution is not a retreat from Iraq. This resolution is understanding the new phase that we find ourselves in with the war in Iraq and the war on terrorism. So it's a step forward in the right direction. I want to begin by commending our American troops and the intelligence community for their bravery, their professionalism, and their stunning competence in Iraq and Afghanistan under very difficult circumstances. Those young men and women have eliminated terrorist training camps. They have gotten rid of Saddam Hussein and his band of terrorists who for years have brutalized the Iraqi people and many thousands of people in the region. They have eliminated the potential for weapons of mass destruction, these young and women, and we're proud of that. The Taliban is disbanded and Al-Qaeda is on the run. These are our troops and the intelligence community. Where are we now? We find ourselves now, the war in Iraq and the global war on terrorism, in a new phase. The President understands that phase. The Congress is grasping with that phase. We now know the war in Iraq is in a new phase and the global war on terror continues, so how do we respond? How do we approach this new phase? Let's look at the recent past. Let's go back to the 1950s. President Eisenhower said, for the United States to be safe and secure, we need a strong military, the best intelligence, and consensus and dialogue. And President Eisenhower implemented all those practices, especially after Nikita Khrushchev pounded his shoe on the podium at the United Nations and pointed to the Western diplomats and said, "We will bury you." Eisenhower's response, he invited Khrushchev to the United States for a dialogue. President Kennedy was told there's armed nuclear warheads in Cuba. What did President Kennedy do? Proceed with dialogue and talking to the Soviets. We did not go to war. Nixon went to China. What during that period of time, or who during that period of time, did we not have a dialogue with? It was Ho Chi Minh. 53,000 Americans died in the 10,000-day war. Hundreds of thousands were wounded, and millions of Vietnamese were killed. A dialogue. What if we had a dialogue with Ho Chi Minh about ending the French colonial period and encouraging Vietnam to have self-determination, that which we fought for in World War II? What would have happened? 53 years of dialogue with North Korea just now may be yielding results. 53 years of dialogue. Ask yourself this question. Is a century of dialogue without resolution better than one day on the battlefield? Don't be quick to answer that, but ask that question to yourself. The world's rich and poor, the people of the world, are intimately familiar with American history, especially with the following men. They know the words of Thomas Jefferson. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They know Lincoln's words, with malice toward none and charity for all. They know Martin Luther King Jr.'s words, you should be judged by the content of your character. America is the race of races. The melting pot has become a common heritage with the world's people. Our enemies are ignorance, arrogance, and dogma. monstrous certainty has been and is the tragedy of mankind. The new phase of the war in Iraq and the global war on terror not only includes the military, it not only includes the intelligence community, but in this instance, it must include a surge of diplomacy to integrate the Middle Eastern countries in a diplomatic dialogue about the stability of the region, including reconciliation, economics, trade issues, medical and educational exchanges, etc., etc. This must be and is a necessary part of that complete strategy to make America safe and secure. The blueprint, the starting point, is to vote yes today on today's resolution. The second phase of that is to understand the words, which is the blueprint for this new phase, the Iraq Study Group. What do we do with U.S. troops in the Middle East? There's strong recommendations for that. What do we do about training and equipping the Iraqi army and making them prepared? That's in the Iraq Study Group. What is the framework for cooperation with the Iraq people, the Iraq government, and the problems with sectarian violence? That's in the Iraq Study Group. What about a new diplomatic initiative with all of Iraq's neighbors, including Iran and Syria? How about consultation with Congress? Vote for this resolution, and we can move on to end the violence, the sectarian chaos, the foolish, bitter electronic exchanges between countries, electronic exchanges instead of face-to-face conversations. That effort, fully implemented, will bring our troops home sooner. They will have a brighter future, and the generations to come for the people in Iraq and Afghanistan. We as members of Congress are at the controls. We are able to control the policy. How? With our vote. Do we know how to use the military? Do we know how to use the intelligence community? Do we know the possibilities of consensus and dialogue with all the countries of the region? If our young men and women are brave enough to go into harm's way in Afghanistan and Iraq, then we as members of Congress must be brave enough to...
I yield the gentleman another minute.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional minute.
If our young men and women are brave enough to go into Iraq and Afghanistan, then we as members of Congress must be brave enough and informed to start a dialogue in Damascus, in Tehran, in the entire region to hasten peace. The first step is an aye vote on this resolution. I thank the gentleman for